Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about how to get into research labs as an undergrad or as someone who is just very curious and interested in a lab or a particular research institution. And this is something that I know was very important and very sought after by my peers when I started at UC Berkeley because everything is so competitive and just getting into labs can be extremely competitive, especially when you're in these big public research institutions or any research institution. People really want to be in these labs, and you've got postdocs and grad students and PIs and professors and chairs and all these people chiming in to just create an environment in which people really want the best people there, and they want passionate people who really care about learning as much as they can about a particular field. And before I jump too deep into explicitly what you'll need to have to be an effective undergraduate or volunteer researcher in a lab, I just want to hit home the key distinction between academia and industry. And what you'll find in academia is that a lot of these labs and these positions will exist because people genuinely want to answer questions because they're curious to know why. And for me, this was a pretty big wake up call because when I started in my first lab at UC Berkeley, I kept asking these questions of like, why? Why do we care about this? Because for me, I find my motivation from discovering things that can be applied to the real world. And what I was learning along the way is that many times with people, especially in academia, the answer is just out of curiosity. It's because we think it might be cool. We're doing this because it looks interesting. We're not trying to make money here. We're just doing this because this has potential to be really cool stuff that may mean a lot to a bunch of other people and help push this field forward. That is the important thing that labs exist for. They exist to answer these questions of, you know, how can we push our current understanding forward in a particular area? And so that is very different from industry. Me being an engineer, I am someone who really focuses hard on, how do I take the science and how do we apply this into the real world, or how do we bridge the gap between the, current technology and what's actually in the market today? How do we develop the processes to get it there? That is more private sector. This is how you are applying the current science into real world applications. This is not something that's necessarily what I think of when I think of research. Research is more, um, what happens when I put this molecule into a low magnetic field? Does it exhibit interesting properties? And that's pretty much the ultimate quest of, or objective of this paper. Um, and then, it's not really our job to say, okay, well, because it exhibits these properties, there must be this industrial application for it. Nope, that's not it. It is purely you're answering a question as to why is something the way it is. And so, with that out of the way, as an undergrad or as someone who is curious and wants to join and volunteer in labs, what you'll find is that there are many parallels between academia and the professional sector. So, if I worked at a company, there's a CEO, and the CEO kind of dictates the culture of the company, and then you have postdocs right below the CEO who all have their own projects and they write grants and they try to get money. And sometimes the PI will also do this. And then underneath the postdocs, you've got you also have grad students who also generally report to the PI, and they are all working on thesis statements and other things that the PI finds interesting, and then you've got undergrads and volunteer researchers within these labs too, and they're generally the source of a lot of free labor kind of, especially like at UC Berkeley, and so this is kind of the corporate hierarchy, if you will, of what labs look like. And so when you're looking at labs to join as an undergrad, your primary focus should be the PI, and you can, you know, any lab these days is going to have a website where they talk about what their current research is on and what subjects they care about. So maybe immunology or discovering a new receptor on a B cell is something that's one group is very interested in. So um, really knowing what the PI is all about, what that principal or primary investigator cares about. They're basically the CEO of that lab. If you know them well enough to know that their research aligns with what your interests are, then this is probably a lab that's worth pursuing. And I would recommend that you move forward with this. And so, assuming that you've basically found a list of labs that you're really interested in that you want to move forward with and you can see yourself working in, the next step is how do you approach the PIs? And oftentimes, like at UC Berkeley, the PIs are these professors who they teach classes, and so it's really awesome when you can take their class and listen to what they think about a particular subject, because a lot of times the classes can be a little bit unscripted, and so people will say like, here's molecular orbital theory, and then here are the implications, and here's what my group's working on. And if this is stuff that you care a lot about, going up to that PI after hours or during office hours or after class and just talking with them about, you know, what their lab's working on and, why it's super cool to you and what directions they think it can go in. This is a great way to establish a first connection with the people who will help you get into these labs. What I learned is that it's very often, being good buddies with the PI in a group isn't enough to get you into these labs. You need to also appeal to the postdocs, uh, particularly, and so you need to be someone who has marketable skills that postdocs would want you to have. And at Berkeley, because I was doing engineering, these marketable skills would involve being really good at MATLAB or Python or hardware and software, or very good understanding of electronics and chemistry or NMR. So once you have a good feel for the kind of lab that you want to join, and you know that the lab websites will generally have their postdocs there too, with their emails and their office locations. Once you've found the people that you really want to do research with, it is very straightforward and easy to just kind of start tracking down the key players who, this is someone I want to work with, and follow up with them personally, or, phone calls. I would say basically the hierarchy in terms of how you want to approach someone with in person is probably the best interaction you can have with somebody. The next best would be a phone call. And then the third best is an email, because all these people, the PIs and the grad students and postdocs, receive so many emails that if you're someone who writes super long emails with your beautiful resume attached to them to these PIs or postdocs, they're not really going to care, because they get 80 other emails from other people who say like, oh, I really want to do research with your lab. I think you're cool. Um, it takes it to another level when you show up in person and you've prepared yourself to, ask the right questions, and you've read really well the literature that they've already done, and you have a good feeling for what they're interested in. So this is all part of building the skills that will help you not only in academia but in the private sector too, if that's something that you eventually go into. Of how do you approach people the correct way, and how do you show them that you are genuinely interested in what they're doing and you want to help them and be a part of their team. And so this is something that you get really good at, and you will stumble and fall like I did, but you just keep trying and you keep coming back and you keep doing your best. And especially at UC Berkeley, because everything is so competitive and you have a lot of very prestigious names and egos, you're going to get rejected more often than not. But don't let that be a reason that you don't apply to a lab, because if this is stuff that you really resonate with and you really see yourself doing, you should just keep applying and don't give up. And when they see that you're someone who, I told you no the first two times, but you asked me what you needed to do better and you did better and you came back to me, then, if I was a postdoc in that lab, I would definitely take another look at your resume and maybe call you in for a meeting or an interview, to really see if there were positions available. And the other thing is, I might be sounding a little hyperbolic right now. The key thing that I want you guys to know is that postdocs are usually people who are pretty friendly and they want you to learn. And I was fortunate enough to have really good postdocs when I was at UC Berkeley. Um, There are some labs where the postdocs are literally just looking at people as a source of free labor. So they will take you and you'll be in a prestigious lab and you'll be doing work, but you're probably not going to be learning too much. And it's mostly just the brand name at that point. And, it's kind of sad, in my opinion, to do those kinds of labs. Just know that once you've found a postdoc or a grad student or a PI that you really connect with and that they want you to be on their team, make sure that this is someone you can also connect with. And uh, I mean, make sure this is someone who will also help you also, because this is someone who will serve as a reference um, when you need it if you're applying for jobs or grad schools. So you really want to have someone who wants you to learn this material really well and not just be a source of free labor. And how else can you stand out from the crowd if you knew that there was just this one lab or a few labs that you really wanted to join? Is on their websites, or if you email the professor, they generally have journal clubs or open houses where anyone can come by, and usually they're weekly. So the PI and the postdocs and the grad students will present what they're working on, what challenges they have, and if you're someone who shows that you care enough about a particular lab to show up to these journal clubs and listen and ask questions and jump into it, that'll go a really long way in making you stand out from the 80 other emails that postdoc has received for opportunities in their research group. So uh, this is what it's like at UC Berkeley. I know it is pretty competitive. At other programs, it might not be as competitive, but at least it kind of, hopefully this gives you some framework for how you need to approach these things and do your best. So yeah, uh, follow up with people in person, talk with them, go to their office hours, call them on the phone if they have one, express your interest, make sure that you've read what work they're doing so that they know that you're someone who's actually really does care about what they're doing. And then follow up with them. If they reject you and they say, like, I'm sorry, you're just not qualified enough, ask them, what do you need to do better? How do I need to improve? What would you like to see me have? What skills would you like me to have so I can go work on them and then come back when I'm better at it? So don't give up, keep trying, and eventually you will find some labs or postdocs or grad students who will want you in their team, and it'll be really awesome. And I hope that this video gives you guys some structure. Also, as a final note, you don't need to be a student at UC Berkeley to join a UC Berkeley lab. A lot of times, um, if you're just someone who really wants to jump in and do research and you're curious about something, you will find people, especially at UC Berkeley or any university, who, yeah, they'd love to have an extra person there to help out. If you're someone who can show that you're productive and valuable to them, they'd love to have you. The key thing to take note of from the postdoc's perspective or whoever's perspective on the lab is that they're going to need to train you. And so the big obstacle that they have that keeps them from taking everyone who says, I want to work in your group, is that it takes time and energy and effort and sometimes money to train people to work in these labs, so that they need to make sure that they're going to get return on their investment if they accept you into their group. So the safety trainings, especially at Berkeley, were pretty intense, and there's a lot of it. And then the materials and all these other things you're going to use while you're working in the labs are also expensive, so they want to make sure you're someone who's responsible. But just know that there's a reason why it is sometimes challenging to get into these labs, and that is they're going to invest in you as much as you invest in them. And so it should end up being a mutually beneficial relationship, and you just got to keep trying and fighting to find what you want to do. And this is very much like applying for jobs, by the way. So I think of the undergraduate experience as really, or whatever your experience is, getting into these labs very similar to applying to jobs. And if you can get good at either of these processes, you're going to be pretty good at the other, because they do overlap in many ways. Once you get really good at applying for labs, or getting into labs, you're going to be pretty darn good at applying for jobs and how do you market yourself and how do you sell yourself as a person with the skills that you would bring to the table in whatever role you're in. So, you are going to stumble and fall, and you're going to remember, you're going to learn the hard way, like I do, and you're just going to keep going. And eventually things will work out and you're going to do really well. And the most important thing here is just don't give up. And I hope that this video inspires or gives some guidance to some of you who are interested in joining labs. And just know that, I believe in you. And applying for labs is something that's really awesome because you are showing that you are someone who really cares about pushing the bounds of what we know or what our current understanding is of a particular subject, because it means a lot to you that we learn more about it. And if you ever do get called in for interviews in these labs, being able to answer genuinely why you care about NMR and why NMR is helping scientists discover new pathways in biology or something, being able to talk about these with that level of detail is super important. And that's how you get into these labs, is by demonstrating that you are someone who really cares and you're in it for the long haul because this is what you love. And if it's something that you really do love, it's going to come through and people are going to feel it and they're going to connect with you. So I hope this is useful. Thank you for watching and take care.